I'm Michael Graves, I'm a partner at Allens, and I'm joined here today by Australia's 8th Chief Scientist, Dr Alan Finkel. Alan, thank you for joining us. I feel very privileged that you're here today to speak with us. I have a few questions about Australia's transition to a low-carbon future, and particularly the role that science can play in that future. So my first question is, we hear a lot about Australia and renewables having been criticised for importing technology into Australia and importing knowledge into Australia. I'm keen to hear your views on what role Australian scientists can play in the development of renewables over the future.
Well, a couple of areas, Michael. First of all, we have to acknowledge that technology is driving our ability to transform our energy sector. The energy sector is big, it's going to take decades to transform, but we're well underway. We've got wind and we've got solar, we've got hydroelectricity, these are important. Going forward, the improvements are going to come from adopting new technologies and improving the ones we've got. Interestingly, Australia has been a world leader on pushing the envelope on the efficiency of silicon solar panels. I've heard figures that maybe 50% of all the worldwide solar panels incorporate, not necessarily under license terms, but some of the technology that's come out of Australia, particularly the University of New South Wales. And they're continuing to do that, and we have a number of groups around the country who are driving on that.
What do you see as being the ideal mix of technology in renewables and towards a low carbon future?
If one goes on the cost and the scalability, I would say that the ideal mix is a combination of wind and solar as the generating technologies. Then the question becomes, what's there for storage? Batteries, for sure. But there are other ones. If your goal is to store the electricity and produce more electricity, batteries are fantastic. Another way to do that is with solar thermal, so concentrating solar heat and power. So you concentrate the solar energy to get heat, you use that to make electricity when you need it, but you do that indirectly by first heating up salt to the point that it's hot and molten. You use that heat to create steam to create your electricity. Those systems, which are under development in Australia as well as around the world, but it's a big development effort out of the CSIRO, those systems can store 10, 15 hours worth of solar. So they're approaching 24-hour solar availability. So it's smoothing the generation and giving us storage. So if we can marry the wind and the solar, what we've already got in hydro, with new technologies, improved technologies that take the cost out of storage and improve the efficiency of storage, we could achieve a zero emissions electricity supply.
Where can we position ourselves in the globe regarding hydrogen? Is there seen to be a world leader in hydrogen, and is that an opportunity for Australia to really dive into?
There's absolutely no world leader in this, so ipso facto it's an opportunity for Australia. It takes money, it takes focus, it takes well-educated science workforce. It's doable, and I would hope that we'll see significant progress in that kind of storage technology over the next 10 years. The real challenge in hydrogen is efficiency and safety. How do you compress it and transport it and store it safely? It's doable.
For me, I look at it and say, well, what are the barriers to these new technologies? And the one that really jumps out at me is funding. I mean, people that are willing to fund these startups. Banks that are willing to fund, and there's also the role of governments in funding. So I'd be interested to hear your views on what the funding priorities should be for our research and development budget in Australia.
It's very clear that governments funding the technology development through direct grants and the adoption through subsidies make a huge difference. I believe that we have won the challenge of generating low-cost wind and low-cost solar. And the rate of cost reduction over the last 10, 15 years in wind and solar has been dramatic. It exceeds most people's expectations. But that was driven by the fact that governments in Europe and around the world have been subsidising their deployment, and that's increased the volume of manufacturing, it's increased the competition between manufacturers, and they've just improved their technology. We've won that. Time to declare victory. Yes. I would shift that government support to storage.
And presumably, if we can get the storage mix right, then we'll save a lot of money on infrastructure in terms of augmenting the grid and things like that.
That's undoubtedly true. If we can store locally then the peak currents in particular that have to be distributed are dramatically reduced. And so we should be able to get a lot more life out of our existing distribution system.
So, Alan, look, thank you for joining us today. I think it's been a really fascinating conversation, a conversation that certainly hopefully will continue, and I get the feeling there's a great sense of optimism about the renewables industry right now, and certainly an optimism in the government. So hopefully we can ride out this selection process and get back into business.
Michael, I agree. 2016 is a good time to be alive.
Thank you, Alan.